Sayed from Drbeen.com. We will study a very important topic today, which I have been receiving lots of comments about, and that is the virus becoming weak? So this is especially in the context of a message coming from a doctor in Italy who had said that clinically the virus has almost disappeared, it has become weak. And so then there is some responses to that as well, and then there is some discussion. So I thought that, as usual, we will go into the understanding of how a virus becomes weak. And weak is a relative term over here. I would rather say, how does it become more adapted to its host system? How does it learn to live with the host system, or does it not learn to live with the host? So that is the primary discussion today, that is the virus becoming weak or not? In addition to that, I'm going to touch upon a couple of other important news that is important. So Ronnie says that I kind of don't trust Italy, and that is fine. And that is what we're going to discuss, that virus is actually not becoming weak. But at the same time, I would like us to go over the understanding of what does it mean for a virus to become weak. And then you can think by yourself to say, is the virus becoming weak or not? So let's start. Good morning, everyone, or good evening, so this is evening time, almost evening time here in California, Cupertino, and welcome all. So let's start. So I'm going to share my screen, and we will go from there. Hope everybody is staying safe, everybody is healthy, and then good evening, everyone. So first of all, this is the Drbeen.com. All of our COVID videos are now being uploaded here as well, just so that when YouTube decides to take them down, you have some place to go and find them. So these are here. Now, let's start our discussion. The very first thing that I want to start with, and this is something I am actually happy about, and that is that schools that were supposed to have opened in some countries have decided in favor of their citizens to not open these schools, or even if they open it, they decided to close them. And I think you may remember, for about 2 months, I have been saying that the actual bigger problem will be the asymptomatic transmission. And one part of that are kids. I actually did a couple of complete talks about that as well, that why are kids less why do they develop less intensity of the disease while they become infected as well? And this is why the children should not go to school yet, because they, luckily, fortunately, they would stay safe. But when they'll come back, they would have infection with them, which they can bring back to their home, or they can bring the infection to the school, give it to others who would take it to the home, then the teachers. So one good decision I want to discuss here, Israel, they opened up some schools. So about 2 weeks ago, so here is the news. If you see here, after reopening schools, Israel orders them to shut if COVID-19 cases are discovered. So they did not close all the schools. So about 2 weeks ago, Israel decided to open the schools. But what happened was that there were increased number of infections because of the children going to school and then bringing it back to their home, or from their home bringing it to the school. So Israel decided to shut off those schools where infections were found. So that is a good step from Israel as well. So here, I received this message that it is Palestine, not Israel. So here, I'm going to go with this news here. So Israel has done that, and I admire it. Palestine, Israel, I have always been very clear. I am not looking at things in a political way. I just cannot engage in geopolitical discussions because I cannot help that. I'm not an expert on that. So I don't know how to help it. So I'm just going to look at that. So good news that the schools were opened and then they were closed if there are infections. I had been saying it for 2 months. Britain continues to keep their schools closed. So if you see here, Britain about 2 months ago, this is 1 month ago, UK schools will not reopen straight after Easter. And about 2 months ago, they had also said that UK schools to be closed indefinitely and exams cancelled. So this is a very, very reasonable thing to do because one, I keep saying this, the children's misery is very difficult to take. And secondly, children can be mostly asymptomatic and spread the infection. So two things. Similarly, in Pakistan, I actually feel a little bit happy about this as well. I had been sending messages to the Prime Minister of Pakistan to say, please do not start the schools yet. There were some decisions to start testing of the college-going age students, and I had requested that as well, that please do not do that yet. That would create another wave. Pakistan is already at this time, because they are resuming their work and the lockdown is sort of lifted, or they call it smart lockdown. Good news is that the schools and colleges are closed. And my reasoning for that was not only clinical, that the students are asymptomatic. Secondly, students are not taking part in socioeconomic cycle per se, not all of them. Yes, colleges would earn fee from them and they can earn that fee even when the students are at home, but keeping the students safe is very important. So the schools and colleges are closed. The latest test that was supposed to occur in this month, they have been cancelled as well. So that is a good news. Similarly, India schools are closed, and according to the news here, as government relaxes lockdown, decision to reopen schools, colleges in July. So still that gives India some more time to continue to observe and then decide to open a school or not. So here, schools and colleges which have been shut for over 2 months now will be opened after consultation with states and union territories in the second phase of the exit from lockdown in July under the Union Home Ministry's Unlock 1 announcement on Saturday. So that's also a good news. I know that there are some countries that have not shut down the schools, but I think it is a wise thing to do. So there is a question that how about Iran? And Syed, I do not know. I did not look it up before this discussion. So please look it up and maybe tweet it to me or discuss it. And there is a comment from Abdur Razak that all exams also postponed, and which is excellent. All right. So I want to take a little bit of a credit that I've been asking for the schools to stay closed. So this is one news that I wanted to share. Another news, which is really important to look at, and look at my artwork over here. That is the hydroxychloroquine. Remember that WHO had stopped the hydroxychloroquine trials after the study, which is still people are not very comfortable with that study yet. So WHO has resumed the trials, including hydroxychloroquine. So I wanted us to kind of look at that as well. So see here, first, the top news here, the Lancet publishes the expression of concern. So look here, expression of concern, hydroxychloroquine or chloroquine with or without a macrolide for treatment of COVID-19, a multinational registry analysis. And what they have done is they are saying over here, so this is the Lancet coming out. This is from their editor. So if you see here, the Lancet editor, and this came out June 3. And they are saying, although an independent audit of the provenance and validity of the data has been commissioned by the authors not affiliated with Remdesivir and is ongoing, with results expected very shortly, we are issuing, so this is the Lancet, we are issuing an expression of concern to alert readers to the fact that serious scientific questions have been brought to our attention. We will update this notice as soon as we have further information. So this is a very important thing to note. And I wanted us to hear the WHO's director as well, which I'm a little disappointed that, remember, the cool beans here, Dr. Bean viewers and us, we had concluded a few days ago, as soon as the study came out, that it does not look like, based on that study, the trials should stop, or even if WHO wanted to stop the trials or pause the trials, they should have looked at their own data before I mean, they can ask the countries to say, hey guys, you're doing the trial, send us the data you have so far and let's do that review. It looks like that is what they did. So hear them out.
On the basis of the available mortality data, the members of the committee recommended that there are no reasons to modify the trial protocol. The executive group received this recommendation and endorsed the continuation of all arms of Solidarity trial, including hydroxychloroquine. So
this is what I wanted us to hear. So Dr. Bill Gates, I am not also a big fan of the director or the WHO's general approach at this time. To me, it seems like they are very, very reactive and not looking at the data themselves and making their own decisions. Maybe that is happening in there, but at least on the surface of it, when the news come to us, when the messages come to us, they are confusing. Just think about it, that how many countries have stopped the hydroxychloroquine. Maybe it was harmful, maybe it is not harmful, but the data has to be collected to understand that, instead of some study on which there are serious concerns. And one damage that I have observed is that there are some societies where, I think it happens in every country, that there are rumors that develop with this, and then people hang on to those rumors. So one interesting observation I have is that, for example, in Pakistan, what they did was they used to give, so remember the original study, that French study came in that said hydroxychloroquine with azithromycin and with zinc. And the function of the azithromycin, I had discussed that here with the viewers here, that the function of azithromycin was to improve the potency of hydroxychloroquine. In Pakistan, they stopped using hydroxychloroquine and continued to use azithromycin with zinc. What is really the benefit of azithromycin by itself is an antibacterial. It is not going to do anything for the virus. It was supposed to partner with hydroxychloroquine to create a better effect. And now you have removed the hydroxychloroquine from the mix and giving azithromycin with zinc. What is that going to do? So I'm seeing these kind of incorrect decisions made. India was a little smarter in this, and they came back and their ICMR said that, hey, we feel that there are better data, we are seeing good outcomes, so we are not going to stop. And they actually, I think, recommended to WHO as well not to stop. So again, this was a very important thing to note. Look at the date here. This is on, what is the date here? So if you see here, this is June 3. So this is the latest that we have. So as much as the viewers here are not a fan of the director, important thing for me is to understand that WHO resumed it. That means they have concerns about it. And the reason they resumed it, this is the wise part, which we had kind of lamented about a few days ago. And that is that he said that we asked for the data from the trials. And when we looked at that data ourselves, we have decided to continue. So see, that is a better thing to do, instead of saying, hey, somebody came in and gave us this study and now we're going to just pause. I can give them the benefit of the doubt that they can say, okay, there is a study that shows there is more deaths, and so let us be more careful and stop. But in this process, there is a rumor set that is created, which now need to be reversed throughout the world. And that is what is not positive. A big organization should, in my opinion, do better than this. So back here, because of this, so number one, Lancet came out and said that, hey, we have an expression of concern. Number two, WHO came out and said, we are resuming our trials, including hydroxychloroquine. And in this situation, here is Dr. Bean's artwork. So here is that agency that did that did the study. They used Lancet to kind of pause WHO's activities. Right, so this is how I visualized it, the way this study caused the effect. So I was thinking that I'm going to tweet that as my artwork for the way the study was received and worked on. Okay, so continuing on. These two were interesting news that I wanted us to share. So now this is where we are. This is the primary topic for the day today. so so Crusher MEC says, now you're just showing off. Guys, I spent so much time trying to conceive these diagrams and then draw them, so I have some some right to show off as well. But hey, this is just between us. Now here is the big question. And the question is the virus becoming weak? So I wanted to go over the theory of the virus becoming weak, and then we look at how does the coronavirus in fact becoming weak or not. And I have put a couple of articles out here, links out here. One is this nextstrain.org. I refer to this all the time. These, all the blue and yellow and red dots, are actually mutations in various part of this virus. So mutations are occurring. Is the virus becoming better for itself, becoming more lethal, or is the virus becoming less lethal? What is happening? We're going to look at that in a second. I have also shared a couple of articles as well, which shows that when viruses evolve, what is their strategy to evolve? And I think these are fascinating reads as well for you too. I have put those links out. So I'm going to now share what does that mean. So look, so very, very important comment here. How many people died? So Carrie says, how many people died or went on to develop a severe case of COVID just because the ICQ? So that is the harm I was talking about. That at this time, unfortunately, nobody knows what is the right way to manage this virus. So those things that have any shadow of promise, we should hang on to them. And yes, if they are not causing harm, then they should be used. If they are causing harm, then by all means they should be stopped. But there is nothing conclusive yet on either side to say they are harmful or they are not harmful. In that process, we should hang on to those things that are hopeful and that are useful. So let's start. So look, here is a virus. So this is a virus. Let's say in our case it is coronavirus, but for us this could be any virus. And this virus has a job. The virus's job is to live longer, to survive and to replicate. How does it do that? So let's just, on a very simple way, understand. Let's say this virus infected these two people. This is person A and this is person B. As the virus infects them, let's say there is no mutation. One person becomes severely ill and becomes hospitalized. Now, when that person has become hospitalized, that person is not able to shed to others with the same intensity as if he was moving around in the society. And if that person unfortunately dies, then the virus will die with that person and would finish as well. So that means if the person dies, then this becomes a dead end for the virus for replication. On the other hand, if the virus goes into another person, let's say B, and that person does not become too ill, the virus is not that virulent. Virulent means the lethality of the virus, the intensity of the disease it causes. So let's say the virus is not that virulent. That means that person is now probably going to be mildly symptomatic or maybe even asymptomatic, and that person is unknowingly going to walk around in the community and then spread the virus to those who do not have it yet. That fulfills virus's objective of continuing to spread and continuing to survive and grow. So tell me this, if we were a virus, would we want to go into this dead end versus this lower part where there is a chance of growing more? And I have simplified it. Of course, there are many other factors. For example, the person's immune system. For example, just like we are looking at the cytokine storms in some people only and not in all, but still the lethality of the virus, the virulence of the virus would decide if the virus can continue to progress or not. If the virus ends up in a person and kills that person, then the virus is going to be killed with that. So keep that in mind, and let's look at how virus mutations can be actually towards less virulence. And let's look at the strategies that a virus does. So let's look at coronavirus for our example. Let's say here is a coronavirus. We know that coronavirus is trying to enter our bodies, replicate, survive, and spread. Imagine, we also know that coronavirus has the spike protein that connects with S2, ACE2, I'm calling it S2, ACE2 enzyme on our cells. Imagine the virus goes into a person, and in that person, and remember this happens when the virus enter our system, it mutates in us. Many copies are generated. Coronavirus is rather stable because its RNA-dependent RNA polymerase enzyme has a proofreading. I'll talk about that in a second. But let's say generally, the virus entered somebody, it went into their cells, and there is some mutation that happened. Let's say the mutation is that this virus, this is the parent virus, this guy, when this mutated, the child virus, so this child has a little, so this is a child virus, it does not have spike proteins at all. There are no spike proteins. Tell me this, can this virus survive? So Mary asked me this question that at this point, Dr. Bean, would you want to contract the virus? No. Why would I want to contract the virus? Just my view, but I truly believe. So James says the doctors using the Math Plus protocol in the USA, such as Dr. Pierre Carey, are indeed using a very safe and highly effective protocol. And James, I'm going to talk about Math Plus, hopefully tomorrow. So back here, this virus that is contracted now, let's say this virus went into a person, it mutated in there, and it became a virus without any spike proteins. Do you think now that this virus, the baby virus, the offspring virus, can it survive? It cannot, because for it to survive, it needs to enter a cell, it needs to have spike protein, and then it has to enter a cell and replicate. So that means this virus strain, this strain will actually automatically die in that person because this strain will end up in a dead end. It does not know how to replicate anymore. So this is a process of natural selection for the virus as well. Let's say that in a person there are many mutations. One of the mutations was this, so let's call it baby 1 virus, and this virus is doomed. Let's look at another virus. Let's say there is one more mutation in the same person, and this happens. So let's say now the next virus has the spike proteins, but it has a genetic mutation in it that the RdRp enzyme, that enzyme that helps the virus replicate, that enzyme is mutated. And mutated in a way that it cannot really cause the replication. Do you think that this virus can survive as well? No, this strain of the virus, when it would enter another cell, it can enter because it has spike proteins, but when it would enter in the cell and try to replicate, its enzyme that would replicate it is damaged, and so this virus is doomed as well. So let's say this is baby 2. This would die too. So that means there are mutations that are happening, although for coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, number of mutations are slower, but still there are mutations happening. Every time it enters the body, there are mutations. But those mutations that bring the virus to a point that it cannot further enter another cell and work, or when it enters a cell cannot replicate correctly, then that virus has ended up in a dead end. So when that virus dies in that person, that strain is gone, it is eliminated, that generation is gone. How about if the virus becomes, let's say we have a third situation where this virus becomes much more lethal. So it becomes really, really bad virus, and it becomes really more lethal. And it has spike proteins, and it has the RdRp that functions correctly, and it is very, very lethal. So what would happen with this one is that even this virus will end up in a dead end. Yes, this virus, when it would go into a human being or another animal where it can cause infection, yes, it is going to cause severe infection, leading to this person dying because the virus has become very virulent. And when the person has died, then the virus and the person both have a dead end now, and this virus is gone as well. That means what will survive in us and will spread to others is going to be a strain of virus. And again, please remember, virus doesn't have a brain to decide what strain to use. It just is mutating and changing its strain all the time. And when a new strain comes in, if that strain has the spike proteins that can bind, if that strain has the RdRp that can proofread the virus and keep its genome healthy, and if that virus does not have severe virulence, then that virus, so let's say this baby is baby 3 virus, is going to die as well. Let's say now we have another generation produced, and let's say that is here. This generation virus is more like the parent virus that had come in. It's not too harmful, but it is still able to go into the cell. It still is able to have its replication done. It still is able to proofread itself. It is not very virulent, not very virulent. In that case, this person who would receive this virus will be able to not become very sick, go out in the community, make others sick as well, allow the virus to continue on living in other people. This generation of the virus, this strain of the virus, has a better chance of surviving and replicating, and that is where the virus is going to go. So that means when virus, for example, this coronavirus, which is a new species for us, which is a new type of virus for us, it's not that we do not have coronaviruses, but this strain is new for us. When it comes into our body, it would only those strains of this virus will survive that would not kill the host and that are able to enter the cells and replicate. That is the generation that would win. This is what we mean when we say the virus becomes weak. It doesn't become weak, it becomes more adapted to living in humans, for example. It makes sense? If it is too virulent, it's going to kill the person and itself. If it is too damaged by its mutation that it cannot even function for itself, then that virus is not going to replicate and transmit. So the virus has to keep its basic properties there to be able to transmit, to be able to replicate, to be able to grow, and to be able to keep their host not from dying so that the host can move around and spread them. This is why, so first, is the virus becoming weak? No. The coronavirus strains that are present are causing damage, and they are causing severe damage, and they are killing the people. So don't think for a second, please, that this virus is becoming weak. And number two, when over the long period of time, this virus would continue to survive in us, over a long period of time, those mutations would survive, which would allow us to survive and the virus to survive. This is why I want us to look at a couple of more news, which I thought was very irresponsible message. So from Italy, there is Professor Alberto Zangrillo, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He had said that the virus has become weak. And he had said that essentially, clinically, there is no virus anymore. The reason for that is not because the virus has become weak. The reason for that is this. Look, in Italy, what happened was that the first strains of the virus, when they went in, they went to the older population, more vulnerable population. And when they made them sick, there was more clinical outcomes. There were more disease observed, and there was more death observed. Then what happened was this virus continued on and started going into more younger population, which we know are a little better protected. Although nowadays I'm seeing that even the younger population is not that better protected, but they are still better protected. And because this generation that was vulnerable has already borne the toll of the virus, now the virus has moved on to more younger patients and more stronger healthy individuals. Because of that, the disease rate has dropped, and people probably just develop milder symptoms now, or are asymptomatic, and there may be herd immunity developed as well. So there are many other factors. It is not that the virus itself has become weak. And this is why I would like us to look at this one. So this is in the Science Medical Media Center, where they are showing some people's responses to Professor Alberto Zangrillo's message. And I want to just read a couple of them. In Italy, I hope you can read it. So let me make it bigger. In Italy, the age of confirmed cases has been steadily decreasing, and we know that disease severity tends to be less in younger groups. Cases are also being diagnosed earlier, which improves outcome from the disease. Therefore, any evidence that the disease severity is decreasing would need to take these points into account. And even more, healthy individuals, asymptomatic individuals, their immune system, maybe people have learned to take, let's say, vitamin D more, or supplements more, or maybe there is use of hydroxychloroquine. I do not know what is happening in there, but my point is we are all smarter than where we were in January. And 2 months later, we will all be even more smarter and more equipped to handle the virus. This doesn't mean that the virus has become weak. It means we have a different community in front of the virus, and we have different tools to work with the virus. Then look at this. The consensus so far is that although the genomes show some changes, there is no evidence for increased or decreased virus features like transmissibility and disease severity. And it makes sense. Why does it make sense? Look, we just talked about it. If the virus is going to make strains, that strains are, let's say, less virulent, then they are not going to go anywhere. If they cannot connect, they're not going to go anywhere. If they have damage in their genetic material and their enzymes are not correctly formed, this virus is not going to go anywhere. If the virus is very, very angry, very, very virulent, then it is going to kill the person as well and not go anywhere. So virus will have to stay transmissible, stay replicable, and be able to cause its own function, which unfortunately causes a disease in us. So let me wrap up this topic as well by saying that no, the virus is not becoming weak. Please do not take that as a message worth considering. I don't think that the virus is becoming weak. So then there is a study as well. This study is 5/21/2020, so May 21. So rather recent. We are in June 3, so about 9-10 days ago. In this study, they concluded, so no evidence for increased transmissibility from recurrent mutations in SARS-CoV-2. So here they concluded, we do not identify a single recurrent mutation convincingly associated with increased viral transmission. Instead, the current SARS-CoV-2 mutations currently in circulation appear to be either neutral or weakly deleterious. These mutations seem primarily induced by the human immune system via host RNA editing rather than being signatures of adaptation to the novel human host. There is no evidence at this stage for emergence of more transmissible lineage due to recurrent mutations. So this is a very important thing for us to keep in mind, please. And then final point here, when viruses are propagating themselves, when they are moving from one person to another, they have various strategies to be able to continue to move. Let me say it once again, viruses do not have a brain to think that what should I do. It is just that there are so many variations of the virus produced. Some variation have spike protein of a different type. Some variation has RdRp of a different type. Some variation has some other enzyme that are different. And then any variation that would allow the host to survive and the virus to replicate and enter and replicate and survive, that variation will win over the other ones. So it is just making a lots of copies. So what kind of things it needs to have? Here are some ways that viruses like to survive and transmit. Number one, droplet. Coronavirus, we know that it is born by droplets as well. So that means it goes from one person to the other person sitting on a droplet. That means this virus sits in our respiratory system, in our mucous membranes, and then is transmitted. Then viruses can be transmitted through aerosol as well. So aerosol, when I say aerosol, some people write in my comments that, what did you say? So aerosol is, is another way where the droplet size is too small, lesser than 5, I believe, micrometer. And so that is where the virus can live on. Then waterborne. There are viruses that are passed in fecal matter or urine, and from there they enter the water system. From there they can re-enter another person. So interestingly, coronavirus is actually exited through fecal and urinary route as well. So far, I have not seen any study that says that there is viability of that virus or not, but fecal oral route is a transmission for coronavirus as well. Then vectors. Vectors are, for example, other animals or mosquitoes. For example, malaria goes from one person to other using a vector mosquito, and that mosquito carries it from one person to another. So that is one way that viruses can live. Then through blood transfusions or through blood transmission. Then sex. There are viruses that pass through from one person to the other through the sexual routes. And then sit and wait. There are viruses and bacteria that can survive outside of a human body, and they can just sit there and wait for a long time. And for example, smallpox used to do that. And then when a person becomes exposed to that, even after years, they can become regenerated or not regenerated, activated, and start causing the infection. So all of these are the strategies for a virus to transmit from one person to another. The question is, how did those strategies come about? These are just random mutations in the virus that allow the virus for these various routes. And whichever virus can find a mutation which allows it to be transmitted through those routes, that virus wins over the others. The other viruses that are blind or that are disabled and that cannot move from one place to another place, or that cannot go from one person to another, they would die in that person and be finished. So who knows how many strains of coronavirus become mutated in us, the patients who are receiving it, and then they have no end to move forward because they are severely damaged. So yes, there are mutations, but so far there is no weakening of the virus. I hope that this covers the idea of the virus. So Ziaul Haq says, but recent patients showing less symptoms, they probably not got infected by asymptomatic. No. So first we need to have a study to prove that there are recent patients are showing less symptoms. I am not sure that recent patients are showing less symptoms. If you talk to the medical communities, if you talk with the people who are working in hospitals, they are not seeing less symptoms. Yes, I can agree with this, that when the first wave came in, it will hit the most vulnerable first. So when the most vulnerable have been hit, at that time there will be a spike of disease and load on ICU and critical system. Then it would start hitting the younger generation, and that may not create that much of a symptom set. That doesn't mean that the virus has become weak. That simply means a different set of society has become exposed. There is no study so far. Look, I shared that so I'm going to share that once more just for this point, that in the next strain, look at the number of strains here. This is all mutation. Look at this map here, how much mutation has occurred in this virus. But only that virus is surviving out of all of those mutating strains that are able to go from one person to other, that are able to bind with the ACE2, that are able to replicate, that are able to transmit, and that can keep their host in the most cases alive. So we know that 97% of the people eventually survive it, but that doesn't mean that virus has become weak. So there is a question here. Do you have any thoughts about how the second or third wave of virus, the typical pandemic pattern? So I feel that there will be a second wave and there will be a third wave until there is either herd immunity developed without us knowing. There are people who are becoming ill and recovering, or there is a vaccine that comes in. Otherwise, or we have those strict ways of preventing by mask, by washing our hands, and by keeping social distance, and kind of we become smart as we fight with this virus. Southern California is seeing higher cases in US citizens. One last thing before I come back to the discussion, I wanted to also talk about the difference between Remdesivir and Ribavirin. Ribavirin and Remdesivir are sort of similar drugs, that their behavior is similar, their mechanism of action is similar, but even then, the Remdesivir seems to have been working better than Ribavirin. I wanted to cover that why is that difference, and that has something to do with the virus mutations and those things as well. But I think we are at time today. So for tomorrow, let me put that in front of you. One, we can discuss these two mechanisms and the difference between them and why one drug which has a similar mechanism does not become very effective compared to the other drug that becomes. So that is one possibility for tomorrow. The other is, there are rare cases now that we are observing that there is viral meningitis. I told you about my friend's son, 21 years old, no comorbidities, very healthy, athletic person, within 3 days died of the meningitis because of SARS-CoV-2. I have seen a couple of other studies published as well where there is a rare case of meningitis. So I thought that we can touch upon that if you like tomorrow. Then replication of SARS-CoV-2. One thing that I keep getting in the comments is that as much as we have discussed the replication in various topics, we have not discussed the virus replication as a unit of study. So if you like, we can talk about that. And if you like, we can talk about Remdesivir versus Ribavirin, or please suggest a different topic. So this is the topic discussion. Let's have another couple of minutes talk and then we break. I hope that this is clear, that what do we mean by virus weakening? It is really not virus weakening. It is really virus adapting to us. And is coronavirus adapting to us? It would like to adapt to us. It would keep changing until it can survive in us and survive in others. But I don't think at this time. So James says that math plus, I actually would love that idea as well, to talk about math plus protocol for tomorrow, where there is I have gone over this protocol, I love it. So there is a protocol for how to manage coronavirus. And so if you like, we can talk about that as well. So Kyler says vaccine short-term or long-term. We can talk about that too. Monoclonal, we can talk about that too. We've talked about it again in the past too. What my current curiosity, look, with all of us, I am in the same boat to say, when am I going to be okay, when my chances of becoming sick are less? And that is what we've been talking about as well. And if we ended up, I usually use myself than somebody else. That is why I use I'm not being selfish. It's just that I don't even wish to talk about somebody else sick. But let's say it is very, very important to understand when are the monoclonal antibody therapies coming through, what is happening with the vaccines, when is it that we would have vaccines and we can go out as well. So if you like, we can talk about those once more. We have talked about them in the past, or we can talk about Math Plus tomorrow, or we can talk about the rare cases of meningitis, or we can talk about the replication mechanism of SARS-CoV-2. So this is a very, very acoustic theory. This is a very important question that we know that, so the question here is that antibodies, how long would they persist? So we know that SARS-CoV-1 has the antibodies persist in people from anywhere from 2 years to 3 years. Is that the case for SARS-CoV-2? It has not lived in us for 2 to 3 years, but I'm very, very curious to see the people who had it in, let's say, January. Do they still have the antibodies or not? And I actually want to open up a study. Hopefully we get a grant from somewhere and we can say, let's test about 1,000 people who got sick in January, February timeframe. Let's see if they still have the antibodies or not. So that answers the question of reinfection possible or not. Are they exposed once again or not? So if not me, but somebody, this study needs to be done. Yes, so acoustic theory, there are so many, this one also as 309, and there are many other antibodies as well that are neutralizing. Correct. So please put your comment out there. I am seeing all kind of comments here, math plus, meningitis, Ribavirin, and Remdesivir. We will cover them all one by one, but just put in your vote for tomorrow. So Yasmin says meningitis tomorrow plus math. I can do that. I think we can do that. Okay, so let's look at meningitis and math. And today I tweeted a little angrily to WHO. They did a good thing that they came back and they said, okay, we're resuming it. But my message to them was that, guys, you should do a better job than this. So on one end, I give them the credit that if they thought that it would cause human damage, they paused it. On the other end, I'm upset that they have such a large staff and resources. If Dr. Bean and our viewers, we can sit here and figure out that this doesn't have enough merit, why could they not figure it out? Cool. So with this, thank you very much for today. Talk to you tomorrow. I think we'll do meningitis plus math plus, but I'll continue to look at the comments to see if there is any other higher vote for any other topic. Bye-bye now. Please stay safe. And please like, subscribe, and share. Do you know that in last 15 days, we used to have about 10 million minutes watched in 28 days. Now we have about 6 million minutes watched. So I think there is some factor from YouTube as well that they stop pushing or they reduce pushing the content when they feel that there is content that is being taken down. And so there is a reduction in the voice going out, but please, you can help by liking, subscribing, and sharing. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.